So, Louis Martinez, welcome back to the broadcast. What have you been covering?
Well, in Congress, I've been looking at what Republicans have been doing. So the next thing after one big, beautiful bill and the rescissions
appropriations
package.
and the shutdown possibly in October.
Correct,
Okay.
correct.
Okay.
It's already passed the rescissions package. There's a promise of new rescissions package. But Democrats already threatened Republicans not to be cooperative with the appropriations process.
They always say that.
That's true, but we saw earlier this year when Chuck Schumer actually did bend the knee and asked his fellow Senate Democrats to support Republicans to pass a continuing resolution, and that gave him huge backlash, right? So now we go to next year. I don't know if Chuck Schumer's going to want to be primaried, just like Hakeem Jeffries seems to be going to be primaried by some of Madami's supporters. So we might see Democrats playing a little tougher and forcing a government shutdown that would end up in another continuing resolution, which would be a negative for Republicans, because that means that they're going to, once again, not actually legislate, not actually go through the full appropriations process, but actually continue Biden-era funds, Biden-era government funding that had been approved over 5 years ago.
You know, I've been spending over the weekend reading Tulsi Gabbard's just volumes of information that she's released accusing former President Barack Obama of espionage. You know, and I asked this question: who had more to gain, former President Barack Obama or former presidential candidate Hillary Clinton? Hillary Clinton could never accept the fact that she lost to Donald Trump, and we do know that some of the funding from some of her organizations funded the Steele dossier. And with technology now, and forensic technology following 9/11, you could tell that the intelligence community clearly said there was no Russian collusion. That's a fact, it's always been said. But somebody with the power, because this happened immediately after Obama left the White House, they set up their own White House outside of the White House. And their job was to malign, destroy, and not give Donald Trump any chance at being successful as president. Because when Barack Obama said in his speech at his Democratic convention that he would transform America fundamentally, I don't think many people understood what that meant. It's very interesting, but do you believe the former president played a role in concocting the Russian collusion hoax, or is it much more complicated?
I think it would be hard to believe that the Director of National Intelligence would come out with such a big allegation. Of course, we do know that the Trump administration likes to soak up attention and control the narrative, and this would, of course, divert attention from the Epstein files. But if the Director of National Intelligence had come out and said that there is evidence, substantial evidence, that there was a meeting at the White House with former President Barack Obama and his advisors to actually move away from what the intelligence community had already assessed, that of course there was no Russian collusion during the elections, then yeah, I think there's something to look into it. And of course we'll see in the following days whether or not some of this information is revealed to the public and it happens to be true. It'll be interesting to see if people will be held accountable if it does happen.
If Donald Trump is president, trust me, they will be held accountable. They tried to destroy him. They tried to lock him up. They made accusations about his kids. This is personal. And let me also say this. I never realized how much Donald Trump winning this most recent election would prove to be devastating. They could have never imagined, whomever they were, when they were doing this, they never thought that Donald Trump had a chance of winning again. The fact that Donald Trump is in the White House is dangerous for them.
I would assume that a lot of people are scared at this moment because of that victory. 2016, people didn't think Donald Trump was going to win, but this time around, 2024, even less so. And it probably derailed the agenda of a lot of elites in this country that thought that there was going to be a continuation of the Biden presidency and its policies. And now this has been a complete 180 on every turn of the political system.
You know, did you hear Hunter Biden using the F-bomb He hates George Clooney. Let me start with George Clooney. Let me move to Peter Axelrod and all the handlers that worked for Obama. He called them useless, liars. The fact that they betrayed their father is the reason why they lost. And he said his father had to be nice and gracious, but he doesn't have to be. He is off the chain, and I don't think he's high.
Yeah, that interview was very surprising. A lot of obscene language.
Talked about the media. Oh, he is angry.
No, and
do you think his parents are aware and they gave their blessings?
I do not think that they gave their blessings. I think he sunk himself even deeper than he already is in the public eye. I particularly thought his conversation on immigration was very off touch.
Most of what he says is off touch.
Yeah, but pretty much saying that the reason that we should allow illegal immigrants in the U.S. was so that they can do the jobs that Americans don't want to do, and that's actually, I think, very insulting. And he made it. I think he tried to make it seem like they're hardworking people, but what he's trying to say, what he actually ended up saying, is like, no, like, hey, like, we want cheaper stuff and cheaper services.
That's not a new argument. Come on.
Yeah, but coming from the president's son with that obscene language and resurfacing at this point to say that, you know, like, of all things he come out and say, like, he's already besmirched by the public. So, like.
But the one thing that he's not mentioning, that now that his father is no longer in the White House, he's no longer relevant. He's lost all his power, all his access, the meetings in the situation room. This is more personal.
No one will buy his paintings.
Nobody would buy his paintings. Nobody's buying his books. Nobody's even talking about him. And I'm sure that has to be devastating for his ego.
Yeah, and probably the obscene language is because of that. You know, to try and soak up that attention, to make some headlines, and become relevant.
You know, the Marines, after 4 months, are leaving Los Angeles. The protests wound down. Los Angeles has been safe. So what else are they going to do? Be bored? Or find better use of their time?
I think that's interesting also because it means that Democrats have not been able to sustain their base's attention through these protests because they've subsided, and it has actually proven the point that Americans are actually, like, they actually voted for some of these policies, most of these policies, and they would not continue protesting them in that way, and that the way that they were protesting them, being violent against police officers and ICE agents, is just not the way to go about it. So I think it's an episode that will be left in the past. I don't think Democrats will be able to rehash it the way that they wanted to for the midterms, because that would, if those protests, the Marines being deployed, was happening in, you know, August, September of next year, that would be great for the Democratic Party and their communications campaign. But, you know, a year before and it's already subsided. So I think it's just another case where Democrats have not been able to seize the narrative.
Well, I'm sure you followed the story that Harvard was in court today making these arguments about trying to overturn the funding freeze of $2.2 billion, and how might this reshape, in your opinion, government relations? You know, Alan Dershowitz made it clear that they were very close to a settlement and they believed they were going to work it out. Politically, does this lawsuit risk backfiring on Harvard by prolonging allegations of the campus anti-Semitism, which their own private investigation revealed very damaging reporting, and not just against Jews, but against everybody? It's just a hostile place, not a place to learn. I
think that from a political standpoint, the case with Harvard is a winning case. It's a prestigious and elitist institution that has lost the confidence of the public. And of course, Donald Trump has made sure that that's in every headline for the past year or more, especially since October 7th and the treatment of Jews in the Harvard campus. There's also another level to it, which is all the ties that Harvard has had with the Chinese Communist Party, collaboration with institutions in China that are intrinsically linked with the military and with the party, and also the training of Chinese Communist Party officials in Harvard University. So I think politically it's a winning argument for this White House. Legally, it's playing out in court, so what is supposed to happen is happening. And again, I think that this administration has been great at trying trying to rein in the narrative in the media. And now we're talking once again about Harvard, about anti-Semitism, about their failures, and about how they're getting $2.2 billion in funding from the federal government, and yet not wanting to give in something to assure the safety of not only Jewish students, but also Chinese and anti-CCP students in campus.
So let me mention this to you. You know, we own one of the major newspapers in America, the Baltimore Sun. And when I read the reporting of the Wall Street Journal about Donald Trump and the body letter, for something like that to get in the paper, it would have had to come from the highest place in that company. And then the president revealed that he called Rupert Murdoch directly and spoke to him and said, listen, this is a lie. This is outrageous. None of this is true. And on top of that, the Washington Post, the New York Times, Reuters, everybody has said they have not been able to verify that story. And I said to my business partner, I said, listen, there is no way, if it were Biden or Trump, we would not have published that story. You've got to be absolute certain, even if you're 2% unsure, you've got to make sure you're 100%. And then if the president calls you, the fact that they published that story after Trump called, what does that tell you?
Well, first of all, I thought that was very interesting how the rest of liberal media also kept their distance. They're like, well, we cannot verify the contents of this letter, which is something that it's unusual. They usually jump at any chance to besmirch Donald Trump. So also, there's something to be said that Rupert Murdoch was with Donald Trump at that suite during the World Club Cup
and
final.
Trump was praising him.
Yeah, so what happened from that meeting until the publishing? I like to entertain conspiracies, entertain being suspicious, and I think that actually, so we had the Epstein files dividing the MAGA base, right? Everyone was like, wait, like Trump, you ran on this, you're not being transparent. But then that letter and that article came out, and actually all the MAGA base united against the Wall Street Journal and of Rupert Murdoch, and there's a lawsuit, of course. So I think like politically it has actually helped the president to consolidate its base and show again that the media is out to get him. If they can't come up with any evidence that the letter is true, then that will be very, very damaging for the Wall Street Journal.
Yeah. I've got to wrap it with this. Coldplay's Kiss Me, Kiss Cam. Listen, that's a lesson for everybody. It really is. That man lost his job, $500,000 a year. He was married. But should he have been fired?
Well, what I think it's really sad is that he's being fired because he got caught, not because he was already cheating. And apparently people in his entourage during the concert were part of the company as well. So
and they knew all about it.
I don't think this was a secret amongst the company.
If that were you, would your wife forgive you? If you're exposed to the world?
I hope not, and I hope that wouldn't be the case that I'm in that situation.
I think if he had not been exposed to the world, you would not be as humiliated. But it's interesting. It's just very interesting.
And then, of course, if you want to get into a little bit less sophisticated conversation, is that their reaction was what gave them away.
Guilty.
If they
knew something was wrong.
If they didn't move, no one would even have noticed that was the CEO of Astronomer, because it would have just passed to the next person.
Everybody's talking about it, including us.
Well, that's also something really interesting about social media algorithms. Everyone knew about this instantly, everywhere around the world. That picture, that video, now like all the kiss cams in different stadiums across the country are just mocking the moment, even with mascots. I think it was the Philly Stadium, they were doing it with the mascots. So there's something to be...
And what is the moral of the story? What lesson should we all take away from this?
Well, first of all, don't be unfaithful.
Yes. I love that. Yeah. That is so truthful, is it? Don't get caught.
Well, and then we live in a world where privacy has shrunken a lot, and everything's in the public eye. So we're always being observed by CCTV or by Jumbotron cams. So we got to keep our eyes open that we're always in the public sphere.
And you never know who's watching.
You never know.
Thank you. Your Voice, Your Future. I'm Armstrong Williams. We'll be back. And welcome back to the broadcast. Shellye Davis is with the AFT Connecticut Division and Vice President. You know, thank you for joining us. How's your mother?
Mother is doing well. Thank you so much for asking, and thank you so much for having me this afternoon.
Yeah, I keep you in my prayers. I know what that's like, and it's just been miraculous she's been able to come home, and that is just brings us such joy. You know, paint the day-to-day. What does a para-educator actually do that most parents never see?
That's a wonderful question. Thanks for asking. So paraeducators are the ones that meet the children when they come in, and we have a lot of our children have special needs. So we get them off the bus. We make sure they have breakfast. We make sure they have all the tools they need for their day. You start off with good morning. You know, we tie shoes. We have to wipe away tears. We do a lot of things, but what we do most of all is we help these children navigate to understand that they have greatness and they can do great things. So we're their cheerleaders. We're the ones that help them. We do modified work once the teacher gives it out, and we're their personal help through the day. We've had issues with some kids. You know, we had a child that almost choked once, but because that child had a paraeducator right there, you know that there's something going on. So you're always ready to help. That's what we are. We're helpers. We're doers. And we make things happen for these children. We are what has helped a lot of children get to the next stage, get to the next grade. And we have a lot of people that sit and say, you know, my child had a para, and if it wasn't for paraeducators, paraprofessionals, we don't know how we would have made it this far.
You know, you testified recently, and one of the things that you discussed was the living wage threshold versus that of the states. And you talked about the pay gap, and you talked about how you sustain a certain standard of living, and when people live below those wages. Talk about that.
So we have a lot of paraeducators through the state. In Connecticut, where I'm from, we have about 1,400 paraeducators. I'm actually the president of 400 in the Hartford County. And we have paraeducators that some of them are making $23,000 a year, and that's with families. So it's a poverty level that they're making. We don't get paid. We have a lot of paras with bachelors, but you don't get paid anything other than that. If you have your master's, you don't get paid for that. If you have taken extra classes, you don't get paid for that. A lot comes out of your paycheck, insurance. And so the paraeducators that I represent, more than half of them have 2 and 3 jobs. Not one job, 2 and 3 jobs. And we're talking about 2 full-time jobs and then a part-time job that they do every single day. Because this one job, being a paraeducator, a paraprofessional, does not pay you your worth. It doesn't pay.
What do you think? What do you think the bar should be from them getting paid? And then also, what contributes to the high turnover among these paraeducators and the impact it has on these special ed students?
Good question. I think all paraeducators should be making $40,000 at least to start, and those are the ones that maybe with associate degrees, right? I know the polls showed that anything below $30,000 is poverty, and that's for a single person. That's not for a person with families. The reason why we have such high turnover because you can make more money now working at Amazon or CVS, and you don't have the responsibilities, you don't have the DCF issues, you don't have the lack of training. There are so many pieces that go into this now. When you come in and you're working with special needs children, they don't really tell you what you're doing. You kind of just are put into it. The training that needs to happen really isn't happening. You learn while you're on the job, and that's something else that I've been speaking about, because people need to be trained to do this work. And it's a skill. It's a mindset that you have to come in to be able to do this work.
You know,
So I think,
oh, please go ahead, continue.
I think these are some of the things that have made the difference of why people are leaving. People are just tired right now because, every year we fight for increases. Before the pandemic, we took zeros because our state was in a place where there was no money. We took zeros. So we've never gotten back from like 10 years ago to be up where we are. So even if you get a raise, 2-3%, it's really eaten up by the insurance because that has gone up.
It's interesting. There's a bill that's floating which proposes a special education weight in the funding formula. It's interesting how that would actually work in practice. And then you have the issue, the fact that retention isn't only about money. What professional development ladder are the PSRPs asking for?
Well, one of the good things we have through AFT, we do have professional development outside of our schools. So AFT they do a lot of professional development. The development we're looking for is for the Board of Educations to train their own people, to give us development during the hours that we're there instead of doing bulletin boards or other things on PD days, right? So we've started a couple of years back having PD. So in the summer, we'll have 2 to 4 days of PD. And then during the year on half-a-days. But if people are being hired after school has started, they miss this PD.
Let me raise this with you. I have a brother who's special ed, and I know exactly what goes in the process of working with them, the challenges, the difficulty, and also when you have lack of staff and all those things. What is it that needs to change, particularly in education, when it relates to our special needs, those in special needs education? Because you know what? While money is an issue, the resources, the teachers, because the problem is a lot of these teachers, it's just overwhelming. It's a lot. It's a lot to ask for.
Resources. That's one of the number one things that we need. Senator Ed Markley created this bill, a bill to address the inequities for paraeducators and support staff. And it's about fair pay, job security, and actually safe working conditions. And that's one of the real big issues. We need to have access to high quality conditions, affordable health care. We need to have 16 weeks of paid medical leave. We need to have access to training and professional development opportunities, and we don't have enough of that. We need the supplies and the resources to do our jobs, including updated technology and personal protective equipment. We have to say policies that are impacting our working conditions, including the use of electronic monitoring and AI in schools, to be involved in the IEP, which is the individualized education plan, meetings for the students that we work with. We need to have safe and healthy workplace and a way to report things when they're not right without retaliation. And it's impossible right now to do their jobs effectively and safely because we don't have enough people. That part, we are absolutely understaffed. I know in Hartford we're understaffed, maybe about 100 paraeducators. And so what that means is our paras are, instead of having one child, now you might have 2 or 3. And the problem with that is, based on the child's IEPs, they might not be getting all their services. And that's the biggest issue right there. We need to give our students what actually it's mandated by the IEP. That's a document. And in a lot of places, it's just not happening, regardless of how hard people try, because there aren't enough people.
I cannot thank you enough for bringing attention to this matter. I know media interviews for you is something that you don't always embrace often, but it actually shows how much you care about this issue. In the 30 seconds that we have left, how can others get involved to make their government, the local and statewide and national leaders do the right thing when it comes to this issue?
So we need legislators to co-sponsor this legislation that Senator Markley has done in the Senate and in the House. We need to support this bill for paraeducators and support staff, the Bill of Rights. It's essential we do this so people can continue to do the best thing we're doing for our students, for the kids that we service, for our community. And that's what this is all about.
Well, listen, we wish you well. Thank you so much for joining us. Your mother's in our prayers. Coming up next, Adrian Mendes is going to be here to talk about AI imaging here on Your Voice, Your Future. Stay tuned. Don't go away.
It is easier to build up strong children than to try and repair broken men.
The streets are plagued with crime, violence. There's a lot of poverty, and it's all a result of lack of education that's happening in our schools. So it really is a crisis.
We come from very different political perspectives, but we've come to the same conclusion, and that is there is a crisis in the classroom. Children are being deprived of quality of life because they're being deprived of a good education. We must solve this problem. It's incumbent upon all of us to join hands together to get this done.
We can't afford to wait one more day before we address these issues, because every day we lose another child.
Let's stop the politicking. Let's stop the games. Let's really do something to give these kids a real chance at life and being a part of that American dream.
We need accountability for funding. Many of the districts where you're seeing very low test scores, students graduating with very low literacy and math comprehension rates, they are receiving a lot of funding. So where is the money going where our kids aren't being adequately educated?
If you believe every child is deserving of a quality education, please go to educationjusticefoundation.com.
So Adrian Mendes, perimeter medical imaging, AI, you believe that AI could be the difference in a lot of these hospitals. It can save a lot of lives. There's technology that people need to learn. But in plain English, how does the OCT differ from the imaging tools surgeons rely on today?
Yeah, so right now the surgeons, the physicians, they've got certain imaging tools, but there's a resolution those imaging tools get, the size of the thing they can see, right? So if you have X-ray or ultrasound or MRI, it can only see things so small. What OCT allows the surgeon to see is things much, much smaller, almost to the level of where the pathologist sees under a microscope. And that's important for what these surgeons are trying to do.
So let me go. Nearly 1 in 4 breast conservation patients need a second surgery. What drives that statistic?
Okay, so what the surgeon is trying to do for any cancer surgery when they remove the tissue is they're trying to make sure that the cancer, the tumor, is completely surrounded to a few millimeters thick of healthy tissue. If not, possibly there's some cancer left in the body, and that's an indicator for a reoccurrence of that cancer in that patient later. So what the surgeon's trying to do is make sure they've got those few millimeters thick of healthy tissue. This is where an OCT technology, which can see these very high resolutions, become important, because you can see cancerous, you can see at the cellular level of detail, which you can't with other imaging tools. That allows a surgeon to inspect that tissue they take out of the patient right there in real time and not have to wait days, a week later for the pathologist to come back for whether that was successful surgery or not.
What does it take to learn this AI? How difficult is it for hospitals? Because probably the reason why it's not as accessible and as available is because of what is required.
Yeah, so if I talk about the OCT technology, what's required to learn that is really the ability to read an image. We've all seen ultrasound images. It's black and white. It's a little bit different. Our images are similar to that, not the easiest thing to read. However, if you can put an AI assistance on top of it, that allows it to be more easily learned to read, and that AI assistant will look for things that it wants to flag attention to the surgeon and take a look at. That's what makes a hard image to read easier to read, because it's AI assistants in the background helping the surgeon use it.
You know, walk us through the BC series OCT, the imaging assistance pivotal trial design, the endpoints, the top line results that was released sometime late last year.
Yeah, that's right. So we have a product in market already called the S series, which uses that OCT imaging technology as described. What the B series is, it takes that basic OCT imaging technology and adds an AI assistant to it. And so we had to conduct a trial. We conducted a trial last year, wrapped up. And what the way that trial was designed was the surgeon would conduct their breast conserving surgery like normal, not using our product, all the way to the very end. Okay? Then at the very end, they would use our product, and they would see if, they would see what they saw in the images, and based off of that, they would make their decisions. Okay, so then what would happen is the pathologist, after the fact, would take a look at that and say, okay, if you had stopped the procedure before using the device, would that have been a successful surgery? Now that you use the device and perhaps you took a little bit more tissue, is it now a successful surgery? And so this was one of the endpoints. Did the device help surgeons actually remove more cancer from the patient than if they didn't have the device? And this is the success that we hit those endpoints. So that's good. It allowed us to submit a package to the FDA for review and approval, and that's going through the approval process right now.
Wow, this is really fascinating. The FDA gave the system breakthrough device status. What hurdles does that remove, and what challenges remain?
Yeah, that's great. That's a great question. Getting breakthrough device designation is really important for a company like us. It means that the device solves a problem in a way that no other technology does, and it's a big problem. So what that does is allows, when working with the FDA, a few things. It allows companies who have that status to be able to go to the front of the line, so to speak, an accelerated approval process. Still the same amount of diligence the FDA does on it, but they respond quicker if you've got that status. So that helps move us through the approval process quicker. The other thing it allows us to do is to have more conversations with the FDA throughout the process to make sure that we're answering their questions, educating them, understanding how their rules and regulations apply to our technology. So it allows for a much more interactive conversation with the FDA, which is very important when you've got a device that doesn't really have a predicate and is a new technology, a new way to solve the very big problem that's out there.
This is a very fascinating topic because so many people they're afraid of AI, but yet they realize the potential that AI has. And you have to wonder, how is AI trained to flag these suspicious margins in real time without overwhelming the surgery with the data? Because when people and their loved ones are facing these diagnoses and what these imaging shows, they would take desperate measures, anything that could save or prolong the life of their loved one.
Yeah, the training of this is very interesting also. So the way it goes about is we've got the OCT camera, which takes images. We work with surgeons, we collect a lot of images. Then all of these, in parallel, we're working on an AI algorithm. And then we train all those images we use to train that algorithm. We take that algorithm, we then see how it performs on other data that it wasn't trained on. Okay? With that being said, now we can run some tests to say, did the AI correctly identify those images that it's supposed to identify?
Does it always correctly identify them?
Nothing's 100%.
What is the percentage, though? Is it 90%?
It's over 90%.
It's over 90%.
Yes.
And what is it has in common when it doesn't detect it?
Well, this is what our engineers look at. So they say, why is it not detecting that? What did it miss? What was strange about that? That picture that missed it, that it missed. Now, the human body is very different. Different pictures appear differently depending on age and race and things like that. So this is where more data helps. And the more data we get, the more images we get from all kinds of different types of people. And this is how we improve from that over 90 up to 98, 95, 99, beyond.
So let's talk about the cost curve, which is a big concern. Will this take eventually, in the long run, I know not just now, save the hospitals money by avoiding these re-excisions or add an expensive step, because they really know how to get from point A to point Z quickly, and you can cut out a lot of steps and a lot of things that are unnecessary that are paid for in that process.
Yeah, absolutely. So these re-excisions, of course, cost money. It takes an operating room, nurses, surgeons, et cetera. If that was unnecessary, those are all resources, one, that the payers won't have to pay for, and two, could be reapplied to different areas. Right now, there's the hospital system a lot of strain. There's nursing shortages, there's OR shortages. So if these hospital beds and rooms could be used for different purposes rather than redoing something that maybe could have been done right the first time, that's a huge saving. The economics are relatively big on that, actually quite big on that side of it. Now, flipping over to the other side, imagine you're a patient and having to go through this, and then having to be told by your surgeon that you might have to come back. This is what no patient wants to hear. It's what no surgeon wants to tell their patients. So our hope is, as we move this product through the FDA process, the goal is to be able to bring that onto market and to be able to work with surgeons with that technology.
You know, there's a lot of emphasis here on breast cancer and on cancer, but beyond that, what type of tumors are next in the commercialization roadmap?
Yeah. So the nice thing is that the current device we have FDA cleared is what they call a general tissue indication. We can image any types of tissue and look at those microscopic. So what that allows us to do is work with any type of surgeon to look at images, to look at tissues. So there's been a lot of breast surgeons that we work with, but there's also been surgeons that look at head and neck cancer tumors, melanoma, lung. So really, the nice thing about this technology is it's very applicable broadly, and as we discover that there is a very strong use case, we can then go and create other algorithms that are very focused on that particular tissue type, and then bring that to market, like we're in the process of doing right now with breast cancer.
You know, finally, the big picture, what does Perimeter's journey tell us about the future marriage of imaging, AI, and this precision oncology?
Yeah, so I think this shows us that it is possible, actually, to solve problems with technology that exists. OCT is an old technology, it's been around for decades, but it's not easy to use for a surgeon by itself, okay? But if you can marry artificial intelligence assistance with that technology, now all of a sudden it becomes much more adoptable by these physicians, which then allows that quality of care to get out, not just from the big cities where the best surgeons live and the best physicians live, but then out into the more rural areas where perhaps the surgeons don't see as many of these types of procedures every day or every week as the big city surgeons. So this allows us to bring quality of care out to the general population, improve the quality of care from surgeons that don't do as many of these procedures all the time, and this is what makes me excited. The marrying of AI technology to existing technologies together and what that can do for practitioners.
You know, this is your life. You have such a passion for this.
I do. I've been in AI for a long time. I've seen, since 2017 is when I first started to get involved with it. I live in San Francisco, so we kind of see some of these things early on. So what's exciting to me about this company is the ability to take AI, where I was working more in the, very deep in the engineering piece of it up until recently. This company allows me to now take that and apply it to something that everyone cares about, healthcare. Everyone knows someone who's got cancer. Everyone knows someone who's had breast cancer. So this is exciting for me, the ability to marry these two things together.
Thank you. Hopefully we'll have you back. It may not always work personally in the studio, but definitely technology can make that possible. I really appreciate this story. It's so important to so many people. I'm Armstrong Williams, and we'll be back.
As a home buyer, you need a lender who cares about your home ownership dreams. United Security Financial has been helping families secure their dream homes for 30 years. We're a national fair practice lender that provides affordable mortgages and low down payment programs to eligible home buyers. To learn how United Security Financial can help you secure your dream home, call 1-800-373-4186.
Caitlin Sinclair, welcome to the broadcast. Thank you so much for joining us. You know, the MAHA report list, which is a national ban on petroleum-based food dyes, what enforcement timeline has Health and Human Services set for all this?
An unprecedented one, my friend. We cannot name one HHS secretary who has done more for the health of the American people than Bobby in just 5 months. Changing the way we eat, changing our food supply, rigorously attacking the corporate ladder, and ending business as usual. Exactly what the American people elected this administration to do. So look, we have a long road ahead of us, but we're making such waves in this movement, and the American people are noticing. You can feel the shift right now. The American people, everyday normal people, they are questioning everything. They're questioning the media. They're questioning the food supply, the medication, the system. They want real health. They want real freedom, and they want real connection again. And that is what this movement is. The momentum behind everything is forming a real connection for the American people once again, and that's around all of our health.
You know, I must tell you this. You know, I, as a broadcast owner, have never really understood the controversy over what Secretary Kennedy is trying to do. You know, I spent a lot of time in Europe. The sodas in Europe taste totally different from the soda drinks here in the United States. The food is totally different. The breads are totally different. I mean, the salads, the dressing, is such a world of a difference. Their products are not the same. And you know what it is? It has to do with what is allowed. You allow these food companies, these drug companies, these beverage companies to get away with. And so you have to ask yourself, which of the major companies have already committed to earlier phasing out, and why did it take so long, and how can they move faster? It saves lives and it keeps people healthy.
No, you're so right. I love what you alluded to earlier. It boggles my mind when people have a problem with the Make America Healthy Again movement. I mean, what is controversial about wanting to feed our young children healthy food? What is controversial about wanting to understand the ingredients on the back of your medication? What is controversial about wanting to make Americans healthy again? Because that's the only way that we can actually make America great again. And then you have amazing leaders like Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who are actually brave enough to go against the status quo, to say what most people are even scared to just whisper about, right? So he's not playing the old political games. He's saying, let's clean this up. Let's get honest. Let's get healthy. And this is a mind, body, and soul mission. It's a mind, body, and soul movement. And again, we're just so excited and happy at the momentum that's behind this movement right now.
How is Operation Stork, and that's Stork Speed, changing infant formula quality and supply dynamics?
Well, there's a lot to break down there, but overall, I think it's showing the American people that this is not about politics anymore. This is national healing. And for the younger people that are tuning into this movement right now and following this new administration and the news that's coming out every week, I think the mainstream media sometimes gets it wrong, right? They'll say that we're not tuned in or we're checked out. But I think that the younger generation, the millennials, my generation, and the younger generation coming up behind me, the Gen Zers, they actually just want something real to believe in. They want to see politicians fight back. They want to have trust again, authenticity again, transparency again, everything you see in a leader like RFK Jr. So I think it's just really showing the nation that this is no longer about politics. It's no longer about the bureaucrats that have sat here and been in control for so long.
You know, critics warn that cutting U.S. funding for GAM risks global vaccination rates. How does HHS answer that? And also, HHS has suspended research at Fort Detrick's Integrated Research Facility. What prompted such an extraordinary decision?
I think these decisions were all what happened on November 5th, actually. It all goes back to the election. This is what the American people voted for. They voted to have disruptors like Bobby Kennedy in office, to question these people, to, again, make this not about politics, make this an industry that is serving the people, make the people healthy again. And so I think all of these actions are actually coming from the American people, and there are so many more answers that we deserve. So I think we're going to continue to ask the questions and, again, have these great leaders and disruptors give us the long-deserved answers.
Now, let's talk about the regulatory front, Ms. Sinclair.
Yeah.
How is Kennedy restructuring the CDC's Vaccine Advisory Committee to reduce corporate capture? Because that's what it is, corporate capture.
Yeah, well, I think, again, this is showing the American people the fish rots from the head, right? So he is completely scrapping these institutions. He's going in, he's getting rid of the waste. This is a trickle-down effect, and it's been long overdue. So he's kind of starting from the bottom and showing that the culture is set from the top. And having a leader like him really sets the tone, I believe. And again, there's so much momentum right now in this movement, so many headways that we've already made. And this is for all the moms out there. It's for all the young people that want to be a part of something. It's for the everyday normal people that had no idea the level of corruptions that existed in big pharma and, you know, big agriculture and big food. And they are finally getting that little peek behind the kimono, and they're getting involved and they want to ask questions. So again, this is a movement for everyone. I think what Bobby Kennedy is doing is showing the people where culture starts. And again, a lot more to come.
Who are the enemies of this movement and why?
Oh, I like that question. I would say the enemies of a movement like Make America Healthy Again don't really understand what this movement is about. Again, this is a movement that's about mind, body, and soul. This, you and I have talked about this. This is more than a physical movement. This is spiritual as well. And I think you look at this administration right now, and if you are an enemy of MAHA, you truly don't understand what President Trump stands for either, because you need to make Americans healthy again in order to make a nation strong, in order to make a nation great, and in order to make America great again. So I would say to all those enemies, you better get on board because you are truly missing out. These are some of the
So let me disrupt you again. Give us a perspective and examples of just how unhealthy Americans are and how far we've fallen.
Well, you brought up what other nations are doing as far as food labels. So you look at the food labels in other nations, there are insane ingredient lists that is approved here in the States, but is forbidden in other countries. You go to Europe and you're not having the same food as we're having here in the States. The chemicals that are sprayed, glyphosate, a lot of stuff is approved here. A lot of ingredients are approved here in the States that you wouldn't find in other countries. This is a movement about fighting metabolic disease. That's really what it comes down to. It's where a lot of the disease we're seeing in the country is stemming from, your metabolic dysfunction. It's why so many young kids have allergies, they have anxiety, they have ADHD. We're seeing rates of this metabolic dysfunction and of other disorders in this country like we've never seen before. Of course, obesity, that's a given that we've seen in America for quite some time. So this is a movement that is long overdue, and I welcome all people to do your research and see what we're all about, see what this movement entails, and I guarantee you won't be an enemy for long.
But what about members of Congress and the legislature who are in bed with big farmers and these big corporations that make money keeping Americans unhealthy? Even Americans will tell you, you don't go to the hospital to get a cure and to find healing. You go there to be locked in on drugs, and to make you have to keep coming back to appointments where you go to where you don't, it's not necessary, it's just another for the doctor just to click the cash register again. Is that medicine and hospitals are not really set up to make sure that the patient never has to come back, but the patient has to always come back. It's an addiction because it's really about money. It's not about the health of the American people.
Well, it's about incentive right now. The healthcare system in America is so broken, and it thrives on incentives for these physicians, for doctors, and it's actually not their fault, right? The education that they learn in medical school spends less than a month on nutrition, for example. We need to lose the incentives for these physicians, not to pack 30 patients into one day, to actually spend time with their patients. Right now, physicians are taught to treat symptoms with Band-Aids. That's where you see the pills coming from, just nonstop pills and Band-Aids for symptoms. We need to teach physicians and redo our system to treat patients as one, as a whole body, a whole person, to get to the root causes, because that is not what is happening right now in our healthcare system. So there's a lot of work to be done, and we can't blame the physicians any longer, because this is what they're being taught in medical school. So it's a very systemic problem, and I think there's been so many great physicians that have walked away from the traditional medical system and have said, I want to practice functionally or holistically. I want to look into naturopathy and see what that's all about. And again, there's so many Americans that are health curious. They're curious about those the alternative forms of medicine, as we're still calling them. But I think they're going to become more common than you know very, very soon. So there's a lot of work to be done. We got to get rid of
the FDA, Ms. Sinclair, just ended funding for animal experiments. What alternative testing pipelines are being stood up, and by and when?
I don't have that information for you, but there's the news happening.
Well, I tell you what, I want to switch reels then, because I know I've got less than 2 minutes with you. What made the light go off with you to become part of this movement? Because you speak about it with such compassion and such conviction. You know it's something that you really care about, and you understand the importance of it for the health of Americans, not just here, but for those to come.
Yeah, well, we might need more than 2 minutes. It was a personal story. And I always say, I've been part of this movement for quite some time now, and you can always tell. You can always tell when someone has been through something, because they have that sparkle in their eyes, they have the passion. And most people in this movement, they've been through something. A family member has been affected, and they really care. They really understand. They've been through dark places. I had my own really dark odyssey, and it was some of the darkest years of my life, suffering from many health conditions. And I'm very passionate because I've been on the other side. I understand what it's like. That's why I got into journalism, because I know what it's like to be on the other end and so badly want your voice to be heard.
Well, that's the only way you can speak about it, with the conviction and the strength, because one person with conviction in this business makes a majority. We appreciate having you on. You're joining us, sharing these stories with us. We look forward to having you back in the future. I'm Armstrong Williams, your voice, your future. I want to thank all our guests for joining us for this hour. Good night, everyone.